Okay, hello everyone. How are you today? Fine, good. Uh, I'm awfully sorry to let you have 10 minutes of this awkward moment of silence. It's all my fault. Uh, I will try not to do this kind of a stupid thing again ever. Okay, that's a promise. I don't know that I'd like to keep. So. Today, so how many of you actually went over, tried to read the first lecture handout last week that you received? Honestly, like, how many? Not many? Have never? Okay, great. So probably, so still you are kind of totally in the mania black box about that the monarch butterfly saga story and anything about it, right? Yet? Fine. No big deal. Okay. So, we are going to come back to that, the elegant butterfly story after trying to cover this first. So today we may not be able to come back to that butterfly story, but anyway, sooner or later we will have a moment of reviewing that thing. May I? Is it all right? Okay. Okay. So by the way, is it really mandatory for me to wear the face mask during the lecture? It's not, or no, you don't know? Doesn't? It's not mandatory anymore? Great. Okay. I can guarantee that I don't carry any germ, the virus. I've never infected actually this stupid coronavirus. Maybe I'm super immune to this stupid virus. So that's why I can be a little bit confident. But anyway, still this thing is flickering. Okay. So today, first, following this, our textbooks, chapter 1, we are going to overview what's life. So within it, we are going to take a look at mainly the life's main characteristics all those life forms have in common. Okay, that's the main goal of today's lecture. So here, really nice, impressive picture of our own Earth from outer space, and it reads like the point of this, the title picture of this chapter is all this life form on Earth actually is made possible because they can receive some source of energy. And what it reads is the ultimate source of energy is the sunlight. For most important thing is, that's why I highlighted in color. For not all, but for most. For most life on Earth. Maybe to some of you surprising. It's just a surprise that, oops, is there any living organism that can live without the sunlight? Yes, there are some actually. Although the vast majority of almost everybody living on Earth actually require, ultimately, absolutely require the sunlight for their directly or indirectly the light source. But some little minor living organism can do without sunlight. That's really quite a surprising discovery. We will probably be able to at least sketch the examples of such weird organisms later on. But anyway, so if we characterize life forms living on Earth. Probably one of the such obvious characteristic is this so-called complexity. Yeah, life is very complex. Especially if we think of ourselves, we can all agree that we are very, very complex in organization and the way we think. So totally we can agree. So that actually makes us the task of trying to understand overall what's life, because after all, that's the title of this chapter. What is life? Okay. So it is not really that easy. Yeah, it's difficult. We know. Yeah. Why? Because the way they build up usually. How many of you actually can 100% understand the way we are built, the mechanism we are, structurally speaking, our whole entire body? So we should be, after all, the one who are very familiar with our body and the function, how it works. But how many of you? Myself, speaking of me, I can confess that actually, virtually almost I know nothing about how my body works, especially if I actually try to touch the way this area, my head area works. It's just total mystery. Yeah. So the organization and how it works, everything is very, very, very difficult because it is highly complex. It is not that simple. Yeah, so what? What's the point? So many brilliant scientists have put their efforts, tremendous efforts, they risk their entire lives on trying to discover, trying to, so to speak, please, elucidate. Maybe he can understand my English. Good. So thanks to that, at least a great deal of the proportion of this life complexity nowadays have been unearthed. Yeah, that's good. Okay, but still, we have a long way to go. That's the point. Fine. So, especially, what kind of mysteries do we have? Such as at the level of how our genes work. Even though we actually get to know in these days, we got to know a great deal of the function of the genes, the nature of the genes, thanks to all those, the so-called the genome project and the technical advances, but still, majority of our genes, their functions is unknown. If we can actually master every bit of our entire genes, every one of those genes function, and the ultimate end result, then we will be in a great shape in many ways, in dealing with our difficult diseases, and we can greatly increase our well-being overall, our life standard, etc. Everyone actually can understand that, but still we don't know almost nothing we know about these genes functions. And speaking of these cells, how they work, how are they organized, and entire body, the individual body, we call the organisms. The organisms level, still we don't know. It's a great mystery of all these different levels. Okay, so genes is a very small level, which is inside of the cell. Where are you, Gene? Okay, there you go. So inside of a cell, genes are there, and organisms actually basically consist of many, many, many cells usually. Okay, although yes, there are some organisms that are made only a single cell, like bacteria, but we always tend to think so egocentric, so that we tend to think that everybody else is like multicellular organisms like us, but no, that is not the case. So anyway, and beyond that, what is this? Ecosystem. So, like all those organisms are interact within a certain habitat that we define that as an ecosystem. Okay. Then the complexity is increased, leveled up. So no wonder why we cannot really understand how they work. And the life's mystery include even all this environment that we actually have to handle if we want to understand completely about the function and forms and mechanism of lives. That's another, the layer of difficulty to understand. But anyway, so let's start. Let's start from the beginning, the very basic step. So then how do we go? How do we start? So what is the starting point probably? So if we try to find, okay, we want to understand the life's complex structural and functional mystery, then what is the starting point? Then probably this cell is the fundamental, the basic unit of organization. So, but the problem is the cell itself. So cell is the very beginning. So it's very simple. And then from beyond that, this cell acquire a little bit more and more complexity so that like when you try to study some subject like a math, you usually start the very simple, fundamental, basic, and then you go above, try to advance in your learning. So that's what probably you hope. So that I hope that cell at least try to understand the cell itself as an organization. It's better be simple or simpler. But no, unfortunately, even try to understand the cell itself, its organization and its function, is even beyond our comprehension. That's the problem. Why? Because cell itself is extremely complex organization itself. So that's a tough luck for us. But anyway, at least we know that cell is the starting point so that we can say, we can define cell is the basic or fundamental organizational unit of life. So what about the virus? That's why we consider virus, even though those viruses are highly complex and highly like a living organism, like they can affect our life so tremendously, living together with us, so to speak. But still, because of that reason, we do not define or consider viruses as a living. So those are the non-living object, so to speak. Why? So what's the criteria for not including the viruses into like this group of us, the living whole group? Simply this, cell. Because virus is not made of a cell, structurally speaking. That's the only reason, right? Or maybe I shouldn't actually. There's a couple of more reasons that viruses actually show. I mean, the lack of the characteristics that every other living organisms can display. That is a reason, another additional reason why we better not consider viruses as one of those living things. But the most importantly, the reason why viruses we don't consider as a living thing is because they are not made of cell. Is it important? No. Who cares? Who cares whether virus is a living thing or not? Still, virus is there. Whether we ignore totally, hey, you guys, you're not even living, still they can affect us. So we still have to prepare for like how to prevent the infection, regardless of whether they are living thing or non-living things. It's just a matter of our own convenience, whether defining something is living and something is not living is just simply subjective, after all. So, okay, it's complex. But this paradox is this. So life is very complex. It's like full of mystery, just like magic. Yeah. So that's why most of us actually tend to believe that whole life form is not something that it's just made of spontaneously, but somebody else, like the holy being, a divine thing, actually created this. That's why, because life is so mysterious, so complex. How can like a living, complex and mysterious thing can be made without any divine intervention? Yeah, that is very reasonable. That is a very reasonable way of thinking. But unfortunately, scientists don't believe that. But that's not important. So anyway, the one thing paradoxical thing is, even though life is such a full of mystery and so complex, but this is just simply chemistry. Life. If you try to think of what made life, and these things, oh great, all these things are actually basically the things, ingredients that constitute, so to speak, cell. Okay, cell is the basic starting point of the living thing. So what cell is made of? All those materials, chemistry. So in other words, life is nothing but chemistry. And so are those non-living. Hey, if you follow me. Hello? Okay. So are those non-living things are also made of nothing but the chemicals. So life is chemistry, just so much as those non-living things. So then what's the difference? If all this life is also just made of nothing but the same material, same chemicals that exist in these non-living objects, these non-living things that have never lived before, okay. So then just is a puzzling. So there's got to be some big difference between we, the living things, and those non-living materials. But the problem is, we are also made simply of materials. Can anyone, okay, before we just jump into further, then can anyone have the insight? Can anyone think of any insight that, okay, so here, even though this non-living material and life forms are made of chemical materials, so to speak, but there is a big difference. And that is what makes us something special, like life. Anybody? Can anyone think of the difference? Lack of incentive to participate. Okay, I will give you 1 point. one incentive point for those who is insightful enough who can bring up like a close enough answer. It doesn't have to be correct, but it's close enough insight that is something that make the difference, that can draw the line between living and non-living. Anybody else? Okay. Cell. Yeah, but that is actually one of the premise. Non-living. Living cell, living things start with the cell, but the problem is the cell itself is basically made of same chemical. Then what's the difference? If cell is also made of same chemical material like non-living cells, what's the point of we call something as a cell and they are the living, and those non-cell, whatever those, the garbage is, as non-living? That's my original question. What difference? Yes? Mm-hmm. Maybe close enough. Yes? Oh, energy? Produce energy, you mean? You mean living thing can produce energy, but non-living thing cannot produce energy? It's very interesting. Yes, living thing can produce energy, but unfortunately that is incorrect concept. Nobody can produce energy. And what about this power plant? Power plant always produce energy. No, that is not. But anyway, that's a good point. But yeah, actually, those two ladies brought up, they are actually a part of the life's characteristics, right? But that's only after this life establish themselves as something special that can distinguish them from the non-living thing. Then, as a result, they can demonstrate those energy, the interactions, so to speak, and another such chemical reaction, which are actually tightly related. This chemical reaction and energy transactions are that we are going to actually, I was planning on to cover those two topics. Good. Yes? Different types of cells? Yeah, there are some different types of cells. Or whether it's a eukaryote or the other guy is the prokaryote, those two different kinds, both of them are regarded as legitimate living things. Yeah, they are. Both of them are. But we are actually, yes. DNA. That's, it's kind of in the borderline. That's true. Only living things can have DNA. That's true. That's very, very, very distinct characteristics. But that is not actually the answer. That's what makes the living and non-living thing different. But yes, very close. Yes. Can do what themselves? Living thing can think, you mean? Think themselves. So in other words, all living things have brains? Yes. That's a very good point. But not exactly. But think, we can actually view as a thinking as a different, another way of, it's very close, but not exactly. But anyway, okay, so I will try to remember those brave and ladies who actually participated. That was really, really a good point, and some of the answers are very close enough actually. Thank you. But let me stop at this point and give you. So these are some of the elements, okay, the chemical, which you can find everywhere else. So I don't want to go into too much of the chemistry, but some of you who took the chemistry class before knows all this, so to speak, that the troublemaking periodic tables of all different elements, so many different kinds of elements existing on Earth. Some of them are actually synthesized as artificial, synthetic in the laboratory, and some others are naturally occurring element. And the good thing is, all life forms don't use every bit of all different kind of elements, but only some of them, especially some of those very common elements, like so. I don't have any intention to make you be so familiar with the chemistry, but anyway, does everyone know what this symbol stands for? Carbon, good. And hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, sulfur, phosphorus, magnesium, calcium, iron, sodium, right? Sodium, not natrium or anything. That's sodium, good. Potassium, chlorine, like so. At least we can read. These are the like the elements among hundreds of different elements. These are the one actually the major ingredient with which that all different lives are formed. But the thing is, if you dig in the non-living soil, like, then you can also find plenty of all these things, especially in the air. In the air, why? It's really annoying. Must be very annoying for you, especially. So I don't want to see this thing happen. But anyway, in the air there are so many, not sulfur, but this oxygen and nitrogens are also plenty. So the point is, it's everywhere else, not only particularly inside of the living things as an ingredient. So this is the answer actually. This is a cheat kit. Probably it's there in your handout, lecture handout. So if you have read, probably. So the big difference is this. The organization is different. So with that, with all these elements, yeah, that's the same element, but only can you find some very special, very specially organized element we called organic macromolecules. What's organic macromolecules? Yeah, you can cheat, try to search. You can look it up on the internet to give me a definition. What's organic macromolecules? Organic. What's organic? The one that not use any fertilizer. That's organic? No, it's not. Organic has a different meaning. What's organic macromolecules? First, let's try to define organic first. So what's the opposite term of organic? Inorganic. Right. So what's the difference? Organic versus inorganic. Yeah, that's true. Organic molecules can only be found in the living organism or those organisms that have at least once lived. They no longer live anymore, but once they have lived, then we can find the organic molecules in there. But those materials that have never lived before, you cannot find any. Usually, you cannot find any organic, especially organic macromolecules. You may be able to find some organic molecules in non-living things, but there is no way that you can find that, especially organic macromolecules. What's macro? Big, huge, that's macromolecule. So, okay, instead of trying to torture you that what's actually organic, what's organic macromolecule. Can anyone name examples? Carbohydrate is one such an organic macromolecule. Great, right. Lipids, yes. Huh? Proteins, yes. Nucleic acid. You two ladies, stand up and then get out of the classroom because you don't need to sit in this classroom, so you're done today. Right. Thank you. So, organic macromolecules are, but still, we didn't solve this mystery of this. So what's organic? Macromolecules are big, and we could give an example of carbohydrates. There are so many different kinds of carbohydrates, right? Including the glucose and starch and table sugars, and so many different carbohydrates are there. And lipids, how many different lipids do we have, right? So many different lipids. And proteins, in the case of proteins, like tens of thousands of different kinds of proteins that are all can be found inside of our cells. And in the case of a nucleic acid, that's better because there are only two kinds of nucleic acid, which are DNA and RNA. There are only two different kinds. So, those nucleic acid actually made us life a little bit easier. But anyway, these are four different example, category actually, four different groups of different examples of organic macromolecules. What's the common denominator of all these so-called organic macromolecules? Besides, they are big. Yeah, they are relatively speaking huge, big molecules. But another common thing is organic here is, yes, carbon containing. So these big molecules, common characteristics is that they are all made of so abundant carbons, carbon, plenty of carbons. Nowhere can you find any materials. Yeah, of course, in these days you can synthesize in the laboratory, like graphene, synthesize the carbon build up through chemical bond, and then new material that turns out to be very useful. But that's a synthetic molecule. Also, another example of such a naturally occurring carbon-containing huge big molecules, maybe another example is the petroleum, oil. Carbon, and hydrogen. You don't need to know any chemical structures, but things are like that. But with those very few exceptions, but all these so-called organic macromolecules, they all contained abundant carbons together with some other interacting other elements like oxygen, hydrogen, and some phosphorus, sulfur. But the main thing is all these organic macromolecules, the main theme is so many different carbons. Number of carbons. And that is the reason why they can establish such a big molecule. Without carbons, without the strategy of this special organization scheme, that's why we call this as an organic molecule. This carbon, when carbons are involved, then these molecules can be huge. That's one very special thing about it. No wonder in the laboratory they want to synthetically build some very fancy, nice, useful material. No wonder why they started with the carbons. Carbon, and then voila, that's a graphene. And carbon is very useful. Why? Because it's very suitable. Very suitable to build huge molecules. So inorganic molecules are in nature is very tiny, relatively speaking. They are very small because they don't invite carbon. Hey, carbon, why don't you join us to make all this big molecule? But stupid enough that those inorganic molecules, they did not invite carbon, so they remain very small. And what's the essence of the materials that build the life has to be big? It's something to do with two things. One is a structure, very complex. So if you want to build a very complex structure, you better have a very complex big molecule material to start with, to use them. So cell is overall very highly organized complex structure, and to do so, you have to have a very complex big molecule material, raw material. So organic material has to be there. You have to. Another thing is energy. The living things must constantly provide the energy. Once you have cells, okay, you are lucky enough to build yourself as a cell. Wow! Now, from now on, I am a living cell. Good, great, good for you. But will you be able to alive next day? In order to do so, you have to get some energy from somewhere else. Why? Because, like I mentioned a minute ago, you cannot generate the energy on your own. There's no way. So you have to steal energy from somebody else. Who would be the very good, nice, ideal victim from which we can steal the energy? Organic molecule. Why? Because organic molecules are rich in energy. Why? Because they are big. Each carbon contains very rich energy. So it's just a matter of breaking them apart. And energy will be released. Then that energy can be taken. Thank you. And with that energy, you can try to use them in a better purposes, better usage. That's why, so twofold, why organic molecules have to be found in the living structure. One is a to maintain or build complex structure, because macromolecules are big molecule. Another thing is, in order to get the energy, in order to maintain their structure, they have to constantly provide the energy so that they can extract the energy from the organic material. How? By breaking them. Okay. It's just like you're saving. The organic macromolecules are your saving. So you break them and then whenever you need it, you extract some petty energy. That's why you eat. Anybody? Oh yeah, there is a very good example of such organic energy-serving molecules right there. Yes. So that is the reason why we need food. So the purpose of food is all those foods are made of organic macromolecules. And by breaking them down, energy will be released so that you take that energy. So that is the reason. So in other words, this organic, another thing is actually here, the macromolecule itself. You cannot make a macromolecule without this organic compound. That's why in order to build a big molecule, it has to be an organic molecule. There is no such term like inorganic macromolecule. That's impossible. Because inorganic molecule, it is impossible to build with which to build a big molecule. Only organic molecule we can build a big molecule. And that is the reason why. And that is the reason why the big carbon containing molecule earned its name as an organic sounding. Actually, it sounds for the living thing, organism. The organic molecule actually originally stands for those molecule or material or chemicals that are found in organisms. Okay. So anyway, spend too much time in. So these are another thing is try to draw the difference is same material, the thing, but once these materials are the component of the inside of the living things like this, now they just lit up in a lively color. And what's the difference? So these are all same chemical, the materials. But once you have living things, living thing always starts from cell, right? Cell is itself. What is this? Cell membrane, right? So the first thing you do is draw the line to mark the boundary. And then once you build this cell, the territory of a cell, using this cell membrane, okay, now those who included inside, luckily inside of this cell, now become become different in terms of its organization. They are differently organized. So maybe, probably we can infer this as a organic molecule now, organic macromolecule. So all these organic macromolecules, they starting from this inorganic small molecule, and then it's just a matter of inserting some of the carbon as a skeleton. But this specialized way of organization only occurred in the living cell. That's why you don't get to see any you don't get to see any organic macromolecule outside of a living cell. In other words, inside of cell, some magic has occurred, and then for the first time, starting from this same raw materials, chemical, now organic macromolecules were synthesized, maybe built inside of a cell. That's another way of thinking to make distinction between living and non-living. So here, actually, the important point, let me emphasize the bottom line is not actual difference between these. No, it is not. Actually, my real purpose is to understand why organic macromolecules are only found in the living cell. Once you can understand that, that is enough. Just that is good enough. This difference between living and non-living, of course, I still believe that is kind of the correct, my own version of the definition, but maybe somebody else has a little bit of the different ideas of little detailed differences, but who cares? It's no big deal. But main, very important thing that does not change is the concept of this organic thing and why only those organic big molecules are there only inside of the living things. So cell. Speaking of the cell, fine. Cell, some lady mentioned that there are two different types of cells. One is called the prokaryote, and the other one is called the eukaryote. Pro means before, eu means true, right? In English origin terminology. So in other words, there must be the meaning in karyo. So two different types of cell, but one is actually indicating that prokaryote, before karyote. And the other one is a true karyote. So what's karyote? That karyote is every one of us, every single cell of us carries inside of our cell, karyote. So nucleus. Nucleus. So prokaryote means before nucleus. In other words, this type of cells came before even the birth of so-called the nucleus. What's nucleus? Yes? Seed inside of cell, good point. Center, like essence. Why? Why the nucleus is considered to be center or essence? Because it contains the most important material for us, the cell, which is our gene, the DNA, right? So that's a special place. That's a special storage place for our gene, the DNA. Right, great, thank you. So, eukaryote means true nucleus, which means this type of cells have nucleus. But these type of cells, because they came before, that means they don't even have any nucleus, right? So in other words, they don't have any storage, special storage place for their DNA. Yeah. That doesn't mean that they don't even have a DNA. No cell can survive ever without DNA. So they must have a DNA, but their DNAs are not sealed or stored within this special sac like us. Special sac we call nucleus. That's the only difference. So like cartoon version of pro versus eukaryotes looks like this. This looks like what? Does it look like a prokaryote or eukaryote? Prokaryote. Why? So what is the DNA there? DNA. Like this fuzzy, whatever. So this must be their DNA, and so is this. Okay? So here, this DNA is enclosed nicely, safely in another line. It must be another membrane. So their cell membrane, the outermost boundary, inside this guy has another special membrane within which DNA is nicely stored, but there's none of such things. So that's the big difference. Examples of prokaryotes: bacteria. So, like we live so intimately now in these days with these prokaryotes. Tens of thousands of different kinds of prokaryotes live inside of our gut together. And so many different prokaryotes are floating around even in this right moment. Okay. So if I just grab some of the prokaryotes, I can capture here, although you cannot see them. So they are a whole bunch of prokaryotes, and also there are a whole bunch of eukaryotes sitting over here. So that's the big difference. So the presence of nucleus and absence of the difference. Another difference, do you see here in this cartoon? Organelle. Yeah, you already know the organelles, right? What's the organelle? Another membrane-like sacs inside some some garbage-like structures, okay, that are only present in the eukaryote. None of such so-called organelles are in prokaryote. So in other words, these prokaryotes are having very, like it's just a matter of lifestyle, different lifestyle. They are living very simple lifestyle, whereas these eukaryotes, for some reason, torturing themselves, having so many complex things inside. Okay. That's the start of always. That's the start of trouble. If you have too many, you are in trouble, and that's what we are. We are eukaryotes, unfortunately. So that's I have just mentioned. Another difference is, although in cartoon I did not make any real life comparison, but actually these prokaryotes are, relatively speaking, very small. Size-wise, is very small, and always they are what's unicellular? Only one cell, single cell. These are two very distinct characteristics, factual characteristics of all prokaryotes. Very small and unicellular. How small they are? Like maybe 1 micrometer. There, this whole diameter is 1 micrometer. 1 micrometer is 1 millionth of a meter, right? So it's very small. But what about us? Eukaryotes, on average, eukaryote cells, all different eukaryote cells has a little bit of different sizes, but on average, 10 micrometer. So like diameter is 10 times larger than prokaryote, so that you can figure how big could that be in terms of its volume, right? So that's a big size difference between pro and eukaryotes. And another difference is always, so these prokaryotes are always really, really sensitive in the crowdedness. They want to live just, leave me alone is their catchphrase. Don't bother me. I just want to live by myself. That's why they live a single-celled lifestyle, single-celled. But eukaryotes, a lot of eukaryotes just live together like us. We call that as a multicellular organisms. And these eukaryotes are the descendant of prokaryotes, actually. There is a big gap between the first occurrence of the eukaryote and prokaryote. There is at least minimum 1 billion years of difference. It's such a huge difference. So we cannot even actually try to be at the same level as in terms of the lineage. They are such a really, really elder. We have to pay such a respect for them as the ancestral forms. 1 billion years of ahead of us. And nucleus, and size is large. And now these organelles. So we all know that. I don't know whether we all know that, but at least it seems like some ladies already know that the eukaryotes have these organelles, fine, and we also get to identify what are organelles, okay, in eukaryotes. But ever wondered why? Ever wondered why eukaryotes only have organelles? What's the point? What's the usage of having internal garbage like a membrane, like a sac-like structure inside of a cell? And it reads like various organelles and arrow pointing compartmentalization. What's compartmentalization? What's compartment? Your drawer. Compartment is your drawers, right? Like some of the shelvings and drawers as a compartment. So what do I mean by this compartmentalization? Make some different area of distinct parts. Yeah, that's a compartmentalization. So different organelles enables so-called this compartmentalization. In other words, this is a real image comparing It's not even real actually size comparison because it should be much larger. Typical animal cell like this having big, some of our the white blood cell has such a big nucleus. Not all eukaryote cells have such a big area of nucleus, but anyway, and so many different organelles additionally have. And our very famous, the E. coli, the guts microbe, gut bacteria, looks like this, typical. But anyway, let's go back to this cartoon. That's probably easier to understand the compartmentalization. So each different. This is one compartment. This is another compartment having another organelle, and this is another very famous compartment. So that's what, with this organelle, eukaryotes achieve so-called compartmentalization. And first, what's the function of this compartmentalization? It's a function, different function. Now you have a different area. So you can, let's say you have some very specific chemical reaction, have in mind. So if you want to have a very efficient such chemical reaction going on, probably it's better to only have very special place for such very special specific chemical reaction. For example, only here. Okay? Not everywhere else. It will lose focus and efficiency. But if you only allow very specific particular type of chemical reaction only in this particular type of compartment, okay, created by organelle, it will be very, very efficient for them. So that's how they do. And that's why there is a reason actually why. So if you ever wonder that why eukaryotes have organelles, what's the usage of this organelle? That is the reason that can provide such a special place for special activity like chemical reaction. But the problem is then life is not fair. Why can't I have such thing? Prokaryotes. If those things are such a nice thing, why don't I try? Hey, after all, I have lived 1 billion years ahead of us, you. So anything you can come up with, I could have come up with much earlier. That's what this prokaryote would say. But still, they don't have. Why? Because they are so inferior entity. They are so primitive, inferior, so that you cannot have such a highly advanced organelle. Sorry. No, poo-poo. Is that the reason? Eukaryotes are prokaryotes are unicellular. What do you mean by unicellular? I mean, is there any relationship, the link between not having to have the organelle and the unicellular? So you know too much, actually. Very dangerous. Hey, don't try not to know too much. You will be hurt. Good. That's very true. Very true. That's very important another thing that I need to actually cover. This differentiation as a very specific characteristic of a eukaryote only, but that is not the reason why this compartmentalization can occur only in the eukaryote. The secret answer lies in their size. Size difference. Prokaryotes are very small. So when you have a simple way of life, like very small, like it's just like your one-room apartment, everything you need is within your reach. It's very nice, small, cozy room. You need to carry out some particular chemical reaction, but no problem. What's the basic essence of a chemical reaction? You grab one raw material from there and grab another chemical material, and then boom, that's chemical reaction, and then new product will be generated. But those ingredients are within your convenient reach because the cell size is very small. So chemical reactions tend to be efficient because their space is very small. Somehow, some stupid organism called eukaryote emerged. Hey, now we are eukaryotes. We are the great eukaryote. We are bigger, larger, stronger. Good for you. But the problem is, you guys are too big, too large. And then, just like same old days, hey, why don't we do one chemical reaction just like we did when we were in the days of prokaryote, and try to grab one chemical reaction. And you would think that another ingredient that need for the chemical reaction will be here, but no, because now your space is entire room like this. Try to grab that chemical reaction, you have to run over there. While you are trying to run for them, then this will run away. Now you are in big trouble. So, in order to function, maybe this is maybe vice versa, I don't know, because I've never been there. But anyway, you became such a structurally large space, taking eukaryotic cell. So in order to be functional as a smaller prokaryote, you better be equipped with some very special structure like this organelle. Otherwise, you cannot function. So it is just a must. You must have organelle because your size becomes so large. Or maybe the other way around. Maybe because you are able to evolve this internal organelle structure, that's maybe you are able to enlarge, you are able to function as such a large cell structure. So there is some limit. Without this organelle, there is a certain limit that you can achieve your cell size. That's regardless whether the former or latter, which one is true, but regardless, the point is this organelle is directly something tightly associated with this increased cell size, right? Because in order to cope with this increased cell size, you must have this organelle. That's it. Okay, so maybe I don't think I have enough time to cover another this differentiation issue. So why don't we take a as I advertised the other day, 25 minutes of a break, and then come back. You don't have to come back if you don't want to. It's just a very nice weather out there. So, but anyway, if you decide to come back, then we will meet again, and it's 6:40. That's 25 minutes, isn't it? So we will resume our second session at 6:40. Okay.